So you fancy Google's first attempt at a flexible phone? Well, that'll be 1,749 quid, please. You can shove that cost of living crisis right up your arse. As an added incentive, for a limited time at least, Google will chuck a free Pixel Watch at you when you purchase a Pixel Fold. Although to be fair, you can get a free Pixel Watch for pretty much anything these days. Walk down the street, free Pixel Watch. Scratch your arse, free Pixel Watch. Anyway, I've been using Google's Pixel Fold for around a month now, and I gotta say I really like it, but do I like it to the tune of almost £2,000? Well, here's my full Pixel Fold review, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now first up, Google's Premier Foldable doesn't feel like any other big boy bendy blower that I've personally fondled and tested out in the past few years. That outer display is pleasingly compact at just 5.8 inches, a very similar size to the Asus Zenfone 10, one of the best mini mobiles right now. Although the Pixel Fold certainly feels more like a wide boy compared with the likes of the Zenfone. You've got this big old chunky bit right here where the hinge is. And the Pixel Fold is rather skinny, certainly compared to Samsung's Galaxy Z Fold 4. And that's thanks to the zero gap, although some rivals like the Huawei Mate X3 are just as slender these days. That squat and skinny design is rather deceptive because the Google Pixel Fold is one hefty bugger. It's 283 grams, and as it's an all-glass phone as well, it's bloody slippery. If you stick this thing on the arm of a sofa, let me tell you, if it's not completely flat, this thing is not staying on there. If you tend to rest your phone on your little pinky there, if you're doing a bit of one-handed action, let me tell you, that is a load-bearing pinky. It's going to be feeling the brunt of that weight. But no worries, there's another option thanks to that absolute hero, Google's massive camera bump. This can be used as a sort of ledge so you can rest the phone against your old pointy finger, maybe even the sweary finger if you really want to. And it certainly makes clutching the phone a lot more comfortable. And when you come to unfurl the Google Pixel Fold, I found it was quite comfortable to clutch in this position. You basically just hold it as you would a mini tablet. As for what it's made of, well, you've got Gorilla Glass Victor's front and arse end, and they're separated by an aluminium frame. I don't know, there's been plenty of hot online chat about the general durability of the Google Pixel Fold. Thankfully, I've personally had no issues whatsoever. Got some light scratching on that Gorilla Glass Victus screen already. That's pretty standard for Victus, unfortunately. I would recommend slapping on some form of screen protector if you can find one. Camera bump is easily gashed as well, although the lenses themselves are thankfully fine. That hinge feels nice and durable, like you don't really have to be particularly gentle with it. Not that I've leaned particularly hard on it because, you know, this thing costs more than my first fricking car. Now you've got a choice of two colours with the Pixel Fold, either porcelain or obsidian, basically whitish or blackish. Now I've got the blackish model and it looks very smart indeed, although I do miss those kind of light pastel-y colours that some of the other Pixels come in. Hopefully there'll be an option for that for the Fold at some point. I do like that it's a matte finish here on the Pixel Fold as well, so even though it's glass, it doesn't get all grimy and greasy, though that camera bump does still get pretty mucky, so you will have to occasionally buff it all up. And likewise, that hinge can get rather filthy as well. No one wants a filthy hinge. And if you've used any recent Pixel phone, you'll basically know what to expect from the software. It is of course a stock version of Android 13. When you want to unlock the phone, you've got an edge-mounted fingerprint sensor built into that power button right there. Just a quick tap of your digit and you're straight in. I've had absolutely no issues with this whatsoever, highly responsive. However, if you want to use the face unlock, unfortunately this is not supported by the internal camera. You will have to close up the Pixel Fold and then use that front-facing selfie camera. I've got to say though, this has never bothered me because I always pull the phone out of my pocket and then immediately unlock it using that fingerprint sensor. Or if my hands are grubby, then using the good old face unlock, of course. And then if I want to, that's when I whip it open and get it all big and stuff. Get it all big and stuff. I mean, this is clearly why I've got almost 1 million subscribers. Not quite the way with words. But anyway, when this Pixel is all folded up, it's very much like a funky, chubby 5.8-inch blower. Maybe wider and heavier than the Zenfone 10, but it's still pleasingly easy to use with just the one mitt. Even my stubby wee thumbs can reach pretty much every last bit of that screen. That display is a squat OLED panel with a 17.4:9 aspect ratio, highly unusual in a modern mobile. I found this is rather well suited to anime and TV shows. Don't get any of that annoying pillar boxing, no slicing off the top of people's heads when you go full screen. Although this does mean a little bit of letterboxing with 21:9 cinematic shenanigans. That full HD plus resolution keeps everything nice and crisp, and you've got HDR10 streaming support in Netflix and alternative services, so those visuals are just as pleasing to the peepers as the regular Pixel phones. And that front panel also boasts 120Hz refresh, so nice and creamy smooth, though it's not LTPO tech for your always on display shenanigans. And you will enjoy a stereo speaker setup when viewing content in this folded up mode. And it's a loud and clear speaker as well, so no worries if you want to go headphones free. Just boost up that volume. September, when Tim Cook once again attempts to squeeze his facial features into a vaguely human-like smile and convince a bunch of idiots that the iPhone 15 isn't just the iPhone 14 all over again. And I've had sod all issues when it comes to the Bluetooth streaming on this bad boy as well, so as you've got a decent pair of wireless headphones, enjoy crisp, clear audio, full support for LDAC, aptX adaptive, all that good stuff. And no worries about cutouts even in quite busy environments either. Now if you want to enjoy a bit of hands-free video streaming entertainment, the Pixel Fold makes it nice and easy. That stiff hinge means you can prop up the cover screen at pretty much any angle. Or alternatively, why not chuck the Pixel Fold into tent mode? This is particularly handy if you're making lunch or eating lunch or doing something with food. It means you don't have to awkwardly prop your phone up against a mug. The only pain in the arsehole region comes if you want to change the volume, because of course those volume controls are down below. And even if you decide to watch in this mode, well again, the volume rocket is still awkwardly positioned around back. Bit of a boring moan, but that has proven quite annoying and irksome several times while I've been reviewing the Pixel Fold. Anywho, flip open the Pixel Fold and you're met with an almighty 7.6-inch internal display. It's got an ever so slightly more rectangular shape than many foldables, so it does feel more like you're clutching a tablet or perhaps even a book. It certainly has got that vibe if you're using this thing in split screen. Now that inside job is another 120Hz OLED panel with HDR support, so those visuals are once again, yes, chef's kiss. Chef's nipple rub, actually. And there's no selfie cam to get in the way of the action when you go full screen, because that selfie cam is secreted in the admittedly fairly chunky bezel up top. However, of course, like all foldable phones these days, that internal display is protected by a very glossy, very shiny screen protector. And you've got to say, this gets excessively smudgy and greasy, and it's not really noticeable most of the time, but certainly when you are working with apps that are in a dark mode, and you start to get reflections off that surface, that is when it becomes instantly noticeable. Every single one of those grimy marks is deliciously highlighted, yum yum. Doesn't help that that internal display isn't super bright either. Although to be fair, I still found I could comfortably watch a good bit of YouTube, fair bit of Netflix or whatever on that internal display, even when I was on a train or somewhere outdoors, a fair bit of glare coming in. And if you are taking in some content here on the internal display, well, those speakers suddenly become top and bottom mounted efforts. That is, unless you turn the phone this way around to watch your video, which is just kind of weird. Unless that is you happen to be multitasking, in which case it makes a lot more sense. Now some apps just work marvelously well on that internal display. So for instance, Google Maps, I just refuse to even use it on the cover screen because it's so much easier to get to grips with right here on this unfolded bugger. However, quite a few others unfortunately still aren't quite as good. So for instance, if you're a Twitter fan, this is the experience you'll be met with when you load it up on that internal screen. Not sure why you've got this massive black bar. You can actually shift the app to the middle or to the other side if you so desire. And then there's others like Deezer, which just aren't particularly well optimized. There's lots of blank space. Everything's just kind of stretched out a bit to try and fill up that display. It's particularly noticeable when you click on an album and you've just got so much blank space that does nothing at all. Like, at least just fill up some of this space with maybe the cover art so it looks less barren and gash. And then there's Audible, which just does the usual trick of making everything bigger. If you go into the library though, that looks really, really crap. And if you actually click on whatever book it is you're playing, for some reason don't get the cover art there, so it's just even more blank space. Gotta say though, love unfolding the Pixel and using it for reading, browsing the web. Pretty good for TV shows again. However, to truly make the most of that beastly internal screen, you'll want to split it. And splitting the screen, pretty easy once you get the hang of it. What you want to do is open up your first app and then slowly drag your finger up from the bottom edge. Just brings up this wee app bar here. And then drag and drop your second app onto either half of the screen. And boom, split screen baby. If the app you want to split screen with isn't already in the Wii toolbar, just tap these little dots down here, find your app of choice, and then just long press it, and again just drag it onto either half. Of course, this method ain't perfect because dragging out that little app bar is a very similar gesture to going back home and also getting into your recent apps menu. So certainly for the first week or so, I'd be like, oh, it's up there. Oh, no, bollocks, I've f***ed it up. Etc, etc, you get the idea. But by now, I've been using this thing for like over 3 weeks now. I'm well accustomed to that gesture. My fingers know exactly the pace and distance to go when I want to drag up that wee app thingy. Yeah, maybe they should have made it so you have to swipe up from a corner, kind of similar to calling up the Google Assistant if you want to bring up the apps toolbar instead, or at least made it customizable so you can choose how to bring it up. Anyway, I found tons of useful split screen combos while I was reviewing the Pixel Fold. So for instance, it's really handy when I'm smashing out a quick script on a phone I'm about to do an unboxing on, because you can just highlight text and drag it from one app to another, and works particularly well with the likes of Google Docs, Chrome, Gmail, etc. And yeah, you heard correct, I do occasionally script this bollocks, including this bit right here. Crazy! I also enjoy Skyping relatives while also sneakily keeping an eye on the footy or whatever, or browsing the web while catching up with some Netflix or Crunchyroll shows. However, I do have some issues with the whole multitasking split screen shenanigans, one of which being this split screen arrangement can be all too easily forgotten when you start using other apps. Sometimes you'll jump into the recent apps to go back to a split screen affair and it won't be there. I certainly would have really enjoyed having a shortcut button to just tap and instantly load up 2 apps side by side for your favourite chosen arrangements, similar to what Samsung does with its blowers. And also sometimes when you close up the Pixel Fold, that front display can act in a rather balky manner. Sometimes it hibernates, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the Pixel Fold just completely crashes and acts like an absolute twat. And if you're split screening, you close up the Pixel Fold, even just for the briefest of moments, then reopen it, only one of those apps will remain on the main display. So I've got to say, so far, as much as I love using the Google Pixel Fold and that internal display with its split screen capabilities, there's definitely a lot of tweaking that needs to go on with that software, and I would prefer some deeper customization as to what happens when you fold, unfold, etc. Now, besides features specifically tailored towards the general foldiness of the Fold, this is still the same stock Android experience we know and love. As always, Android remains slightly less customizable here on Pixel devices compared with some rivals, so you still can't get rid of that Google search bar. But there's loads of other great features packed in here, including the excellent call screening features, you've got that dependable built-in VPN, and the formidable privacy features too. And as always with its Pixel blowers, Google has added that separate Titan security chip to securely store all of your privates. So let's have a shufty at the performance of the Pixel Fold, which is powered once again by Google's own Tensor G2 chipset, backed here by 12 gigs of RAM. And the everyday performance, besides the odd occasional bit of jank which we already discussed, is generally satisfyingly smooth. Very rare to see any kind of stumble or judder right here on the Fold, although occasionally it does get a wee bit toasty, just like the Pixel 7 phones. Especially if you're using it outdoors on a sunshiny day, it really doesn't like that. But as long as you're in a nice bit of shade, you'll find that you can play the likes of Genshin Impact for absolutely bloody ages on the Pixel Fold. With the graphics scaled all the way up to the very highest settings, you will see the occasional dip in that frame rate when things get a bit frantic. But it's still a very playable experience, and of course you've got that big old internal screen if you want to go that route. And yes, you've got the usual Google gaming mode thrust on here as well, so you can block notifications, you can record the action, stream direct to YouTube if you fancy showing off your mad skills. And as you'd kind of hope from a smartphone that costs the best part of £2,000, you've got full 5G connectivity, although I did find that the mobile connection could be a little bit shonky at times. In local spots around here where usually I get an okay reception, I would get absolutely bugger all out of the Fold. Overall it was generally fine, but I did notice just not quite as strong as some rivals. As for that battery tech, well, Google has somehow managed to stuff a 4,800 mAh-ish battery inside of this thing. Pretty great size for a foldable. And since I've been reviewing the Google Pixel Fold, I did manage to completely kill that battery life from 100% to 0% in under a day. Those days did involve 4 hours of seriously tedious train travel. Those times aside, the Pixel Fold has lasted me until I've been all tucked up with Teddy at night, no worries whatsoever. However, if you do find that you're running low on juice, you need to plug it in, give it a bit of a boost, well, it's very slow at recharging, just like the regular Pixels. Bung a cable in, it'll take a good couple of hours to fill right up, and even if you just charge it for 15-20 minutes, you'll get a few extra percent, and that's about it. But if you like to shun cables, you do have wireless charging support from the Google Pixel Fold as well. Now, Google reckons that the Pixel Fold boasts the best camera on a foldable phone. And let's face it, if anyone knows how to do phone cameras right, it's Google. You've got a grand total of 5 camera lenses slapped on this thing. Let's do a bit of a roll call. Starting with a 9.5 megapixel selfie shooter housed here on the front. Crack it open and you'll see you've got an 8 megapixel shooter housed in that top bezel. And then around back you've got a triple lens setup headlined by a 48 megapixel quad PD sensor. Nice bit of optical image stabilization chucked in, and that's backed by telephoto and ultra wide angle shooters. But of course the software here is your usual Pixel camera app, which veers towards point and shoot simplicity rather than simply chucking a whole bunch of camera features at you like many rivals do. Plus of course you've got Google's usual image processing brains to make sure your pics look as lovely as possible. And lovely certainly is an adjective that can be leveled at the photos spaffed out by the Pixel Fold. Like those Pixel 7 blowers, this bendy wonder churns out natural looking images even when the light is being a total tosspot. You can snap happily against a bright sky and still capture those deep attractive blues rather than a washed out pastel-y colour. And as usual, sharp contrast is deftly dealt with. Your photos won't look over-processed, unlike snaps taken with, say for instance, an iPhone. Living subjects are cleanly papped as well, even if they're refusing to pose for you. While portrait shots also come out as expected, with some smart bokeh action that rarely balks up. That night mode activates automatically when needed and helps to brighten up your snap with on-screen guidance to help you keep as still as possible during capture. Just hold for a second or two and you'll get impressive results even in near darkness, although I did see some blowouts when light sources sneaked into the shot. And the Pixel Fold also serves up a 10.8 meg ultra wide angle lens if you need it. And thanks to that dependable processing, I found the colour representation was very similar with this sensor compared with that main shooter. Detail levels are fine as well, and the distortion isn't too troublesome. And last up for that arse end is a telephoto lens with 5x optical zoom, supported with some fantastic stabilization to help you easily take a crisp and clean shot. Although for some reason the Pixel Fold does seem to take a second or so to swap to the telephoto shooter whenever I zoom in. Google wisely maxed out the zoom at 20x, which is less than many rivals, but photos are still pretty sharp at that maximum point. Any greater and the digital cropping would mean pixely pics. Now at any point you can swap to that 9.5 megapixel front-facing shooter if you want to take a selfie, just like on any standard smartphone. Otherwise, if you don't mind the slightly awkward handling, you can just unfurl the Pixel Fold and swap to that rear camera instead. And this certainly allows for more finely detailed snaps at any time of day, but switching to that back cam is certainly the best idea when the lighting is cack, as you get sharper pics with deeper tones. And then yes, you've got that 8 megapixel camera stuffed away inside the phone, just above that massive internal display. You can use this for a bit of Skype and Teams and Zooms and whatever. It's not too bad, although I did find that everything looked a bit foggy whenever I used this, even if I thoroughly wiped down that lens. And also, when I strayed more than just a few feet from the Pixel Fold, people complained they couldn't really hear me anymore, so you'll want to stay quite close when you are doing your video chats. And if you record video with the main camera setup, you will get some respectable 4K resolution results, although this is one area where those iPhones and the Samsung Galaxies are definitely better, producing sharper visuals overall. Like many mobiles, the Pixel Fold does struggle when things get a bit dark, but as long as you aren't shooting too much random going on in dive bars like this, it's all good. The focus doesn't lose the plot even when you're shooting fast moving subjects, and you can zoom in and out as much as you like. And the audio side of things is fine as well, even if you're shooting outdoors on quite a gusty day. And that right there is what I think of the Google Pixel Fold smartphone after having it stuffed in my shorts, my backpack, wherever else it would fit for the best part of a month. And so far, I gotta say I do rather like it, but should you buy it? Well, are you absolutely minted? The Pixel Fold certainly is a fantastic effort for a first foldable from Google. I wasn't expecting it to be quite this good. The hardware is excellent. Software definitely needs some refinement, some tweaking though, to really take advantage of the foldy design and that massive internal display. Personally, I'd be more swayed by a Pixel 7a or a Pixel 7 as they're seriously chuffing cheaper. As far as bendy blowers go, I do prefer the more compact efforts like the Z Flips of the world. But anyway, I'm going to stop banging on now, otherwise this is going to be like a 20-minute plus extravaganza. That's what I reckon. Be great to hear your thoughts on the Google Pixel Fold down in the comments below. Please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest, greatest, bendiest, foldiest tech. Have yourselves a bloody wonderful rest of the week. Cheers!